Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and we're now going to talk about the Snyder Cut, and this is going to be my second video on the very controversial and highly debated topic of Justice League and Zack Snyder's original version, which is going to be released on HBO Max, fully restored in 2021. In my first video I talked about the overall history of the DCU and Zack's handling of the DC cinematic universe and its characters involved. I felt was a failure, and overall I covered the point of the Snyder Cut in general and how I couldn't understand all the general hype and attention being focused on it. For this video now I'm going to talk more about the fans in general and the overall perception in terms of the release the Snyder Cut movement. Is it a victory for the fans? Are there elements of toxic fandom, as we've seen recent articles perceive the kind of online supporting of this film project on here, and what ramifications will it have going forward for other future projects and the entertainment industry in general in terms of streaming channels and the movie business as well. So I'm just going to go and cover now initially the issue of fans, and is this a victory? Now, I mentioned before in my previous video, but I'll talk about it here again. If you are a supporter of Zack Snyder's vision and you very much enjoyed these movies, you liked his whole style and his visual aesthetic that was applied to these movies, then yes, this is a victory for you. You know, as I mentioned in my previous video, a lot of fans, they've spent a lot of time and effort over the last 2 years, various online tweets and podcasts and YouTube videos, also various amount of charity donations and crowdfunding and other financial initiatives to get posters and billboard and other bits of promotion put out there for the Snyder Cut. So if you are a fan and you've been pushing for this for over 2 years, then yes, this is a victory of you. You have managed to go out there and show a passion and favoritism to something that you support, that you were a fan of, and you've seen that come to fruition now. So yes, this is a victory for you if you are indeed a Zack Snyder fan. Now, if you are coming at it perspective of somebody who may not be necessarily a fan of the DC heroes or indeed Zack Snyder, but you're very passionate about people having a voice online, people who don't necessarily have any kind of affiliate to any kind of major media corporation or studio business, they're just what you would deem an average Joe or an average person, being able to go online, have a voice, and seen that voice have a major significant impact within mainstream media, then yes, that is a victory for you also. So yes, you have seen something that you believe in come to fruition in the long run. Okay, so is there anything wrong with that? If you are passionate about Zack Snyder's work and the Snyder Cut has resurfaced, is there anything wrong with that? No, I don't think there is. I don't think there's nothing wrong if you believe in something and you are passionate about somebody's work and you spent years supporting and pushing for that work to be fully realised, and you've seen that happen. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that causes any particular harm in general to anybody who is not involved within the mainstream media or anything to do with the DC characters. Now, I know I said in my first video that I couldn't understand the major hype and time and attention because I believe more time should be focused on rebuilding the DC cinematic universe, which again I think is all over the place in terms of the initial projects that we saw. You know, everything from Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman to Justice League, and later on where we've seen other standalone projects such as Wonder Woman, Joker, Aquaman, Shazam, who have all shown a desire, if you like, to step away from the Zack Snyder vision. And yes, they've been standalone successes, of course, but there's no cohesive feel towards them. Okay, so in terms of building a cinematic universe, we're nowhere near to what I feel we should be getting. Okay, so that's where I think the time and focus should be put upon. But the Snyder Cut movement doesn't necessarily affect that, or it shouldn't affect that. Okay, there's no reason why when we get Zack Snyder's version released in 2021 and fans get what they want, that we can't push on with the cinematic universe as well. Now, that's on the studio, not the fans who have been supporting the Snyder Cut movement. So I don't think that we should be attacking anybody supporting the Snyder Cut, even if we believe more focus should be put on rebuilding the cinematic universe. Okay, now the only question I would put towards the Snyder Cut movement and the fans getting what they want. Now, what we have to realise is whenever you get an online campaign a Twitter movement that builds momentum online, what you have to understand is that while yes, you will get people who are passionate about the work and truly believe and want to see whatever they're supporting realised, but you're going to get a lot of trendsetters as well. You're going to get a lot of trolls, a lot of people who aren't really invested at all in the Snyder Cut or the DC heroes. As silly as it sounds, they may not even know who Zack Snyder is or what the Snyder Cut movement is about. They just go online, they see what's trending, they see a lot of people interacting with this issue, and they just click, and they'll just kind of replicate tweets and what people are saying, and they'll just retweet things, and they'll just want to be part of a movement. They just want to be part of something that's trending. Okay, so that's my only issue when we kind of celebrate the fact that this is a big massive movement. How many of those fans really care about this Snyder Cut version? How many people really care about his vision of the DC heroes? Okay, and I mentioned in my first video is that we will really get the test when we get those HBO Max subscription numbers for when the Zack Snyder Cut is released on there. Now, we don't know when it will be released. This could be next June, next July, next November. We're not sure yet. I mean, you know, there's still a lot of work to do in terms of the post-production project, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong, or a lot of issues that could arise as Zack is putting together the finishing touches. Okay, but when that version does originally emerge online, how many people are actually going to put their money and support it? Because that's really where we'll tell how many people are into this Snyder Cut movement. Because as I've mentioned in other videos, the problem you have is when you go online in terms of streaming and you put a digital copy or online copy on the internet, it's kind of fair game at that point. You know, people are going to pirate it, they're going to torrent it, they're going to try and obtain it as freely as possible. Okay, now if the Snyder Cut movement is a genuine entity, then what we would expect to see is big numbers for the HBO Max, big amount of subscriptions. Okay, now if we do get that, then we can really kind of extend this kind of idea or this theory of fans having a massive voice online, and maybe we can see other projects going forward. So it's most recently been talked about as well about David Ayer's version of Suicide Squad. Now, he released it to very good box office performance, I believe. I think it took around 750 million or around that mark when it was released. But there is an extended version which I think is more complete than Zack Snyder's version, and now we're kind of getting released the Ayer cut. People want to see the Suicide Squad extended version on here. So if the release of Snyder Cut movement is to be treated with credibility, and it's a major success of HBO Max, then yes, maybe this will propel more other versions, extended versions of other movies that people want to see online. And I think that's a good thing. You know, if people go online and they want to support other extended versions of films and they would like to see, and the studios release those movies, then again, I think that's positive. I think that's a good thing to support. We've seen over the years, if we look at the like of Kingdom of Heaven, how improved the extended version of that was, and also with the Lord of the Rings, how even more the extended editions enhanced the quality over the theatrical versions that were released. So again, I don't see any problem with that. However, if we get the release of the HBO Max and there aren't really good subscriptions, and it doesn't really prove to be a successful venture, then the perception of online movement and fans having a voice is going to change, because people will troll. They will say, look at that, all those years spent pushing and marketing the Snyder Cut, and then when they actually gave the fans what they wanted, the fans didn't really support it. So it's kind of going to hurt more of the perception of fans online in general, right? If the Snyder Cut doesn't really have a commercial success within HBO Max, people are just going to dismiss anybody that goes online and speaks passionately about other movies. Oh, you were just like the Snyder Cut movement, those fans who pushed a lot the product when it didn't release, and then when the product did release, they didn't really do anything about it to support it. So you see, that's one perspective that you look at, the perception of fans if the Snyder Cut is unsuccessful. Okay, and if we want to push on further, so as we know, people have spoke very passionately about the likes of Star Trek and Star Wars and other major franchises, Doctor Who, right? So if the fans want to get things changed about those franchises, okay, and they push on with an online movement, just like we've had with the release of Snyder Cut, okay, if the Snyder Cut fails, then in one way it might hurt fans of other respective franchises who want to see changes made to other IPs, who want to see changes made to franchises they feel are being mishandled and mistreated. In a certain scenario, their voices might have been heard, but if the Snyder Cut fails, then the voices might not be heard as much. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's really key, I think, if you want to believe in the Snyder Cut movement, and if it is going to be deemed a victory for fans of the Snyder work or fans of online movement and online campaigns, I think it's very important for the Snyder Cut to be released and be very successful, regardless of what I think about the DC heroes, regardless of what I think about the mishandling of the DC heroes by Zack Snyder. Relating more to fans having a voice online and fans being passionate about a certain project, yes, I do think it is important that the Snyder Cut is successful from that perspective, because what it will do, again, if it is a success, it will encourage other people to speak louder and put their opinions more forward, and I think that's a good thing. Now, to go further on that, when we talk about toxic fandom, now, as we've seen with recent articles, there's been this perception of the fact that the Snyder Cut has been a toxic exercise in terms of fandom, and how the studios have given in to the pressures and the bullying within toxic fans. Now, to be honest, I don't believe the Snyder Cut is an element of toxic fandom. When we look at toxic fandom, what do we think? My perception of toxic fandom is when you go online and whatever subject you're protesting about or arguing about, someone has a different point of view or someone has a different perspective, there's a lively debate. What happens is that debate veers away from the actual subject and turns more into personal attacks and, really kind of aggressive and nasty tweets online, and online harassment, if you like, online stalking, if you like. That's when it turns toxic, and we get nasty emails and really kind of impersonal articles, really just throwing insults back on one each other, and it veers away from the subject. That is toxicity. Okay, now from what I can tell and what I can see from the Snyder Cut movement, there hasn't been any elements of toxicity. There's been no kind of vitriol aimed towards Zack Snyder, or in particular any of the people that were in charge with Warner Brothers. Yes, there have been videos questioning the handling of the DC heroes and certain decisions made by Warner Brothers in terms of the approaches made into building the DC universe, but that's not toxic, that's constructive criticism. Okay, in terms of actual toxicity, there has been none. Okay, there's been quite an intense debate over whether the Zack Snyder version exists, but that's not toxicity, that's more semantics. Does it exist? Yes, it does, but it's an incomplete version, so it doesn't exist, right? That's been the kind of back and forth. It exists only in an incomplete version. Whereas if you want to take the more literal sense of existence, it only exists if it's complete. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's really been the major heated debate within the Snyder Cut. It's questioning whether it actually exists, rather than fans kind of attacking each other over it, which of course makes no sense. Why would you attack someone over an incomplete finished version of a movie, right? We could look at other franchises, particularly with Star Wars and Star Trek. I go back to those again, when we have seen kind of more aggressive vitriol thrown towards the likes of Kathleen Kennedy, who's in charge of Star Wars, and Alex Kurtzman, who's in charge of Star Trek. We have seen a much more of a verbal attacking towards those as personalities, questioning, their abilities and how they are, or how good they are at their job. I would deem that maybe a bit more toxic than what's going on with the Snyder Cut version. So I don't believe there's been toxic fandom within this Snyder Cut movement. So why is that perception? Why are people talking about that? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with mainstream media and the fact that you have a lot of people involved within media who get access. We call it the all access media, or what people refer to as shills. And this is basically when people, they spend a certain amount of effort promoting a certain film or a certain franchise or a certain product, and in exchange they get access to premieres and interviews and events that are used to promote the product. Okay, so in turn, what happens is when they do their coverage, they do their interviews, they do their articles, it will always be in a more positive light. It will never criticize at all the franchise or the direction or the producers, the showrunners, anybody that's involved. There will always kind of be a much more of an agreeable presentation. Okay, and that gets looked down upon a lot of fans, because there will be times when certain films or shows or franchises make mistakes or they mishandle the characters and they don't get criticized. So that's when we get this kind of shill kind of persona of mainstream media. So the people that are involved within the all access media, perhaps they look now at the Snyder Cut movement and they've seen the influence and the impact as it has, right? And really, this HBO Max has been forced by that Snyder Cut movement, and maybe they feel a bit salty about it, a bit jealous, because in many ways the Snyder Cut movement has been free advertising, it's been free promotion, right? It's free promotion for the HBO Max. So what may happen now is that people in charge of HBO Max, they may not feel the need to employ, if you like, all access media to promote their services. Why do that when you've got this free press from this Snyder Cut movement, right? The Snyder Cut movement, you know, the hashtag has got massive amounts of attention and focus, right? And all that is good for the HBO Max streaming app. That's what they want. So that's free advertising. So why pay someone to promote your services when you can just rely on online movements? And if you're part of an all access media, you're going to feel as if you're not as important anymore. You're not as required anymore. You're surplus to the needs of the people in charge of these services, right? Because they won't need you anymore. If thousands of people are just going to go online and tweet about a certain film, then we won't need anyone to promote our services anymore. So they kind of feel a bit left out. They kind of feel a bit out of the picture now. And maybe it's kind of exposing their shillness, if you like, the fact that they don't really have a voice or they don't really have a set opinion. They're just kind of there as puppets to kind of promote the material, you know, and they're not allowed to really say what they want and express how they feel. Whereas they look online and people who are expressing what they feel, people who are saying what they want, have had a bigger voice and a bigger impact than what they have. So maybe there's a bit of jealousy there that has led to this kind of perception of the Snyder Cut being toxic fans. Again, that's something again that we could look into again. Now, my final point on this, I just want to again go back to this idea of the Snyder Cut being a victory for fans. Now, what we have to remember is why the Snyder Cut exists. Okay, we go back to 2017, it underperformed. Okay, now after Justice League, there was a clear directive that DC wanted to stray away from Snyder's vision. You can tell that from the tone of the following films. We look at Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman, later on with Aquaman, and also Shazam. Look at the brighter tone and feel of those movies. We could even throw Birds of Prey in there, okay? A lot of these projects, look at the visual aesthetic. There's a lot more colour, there's a lot more vibrancy, there's a lot more humour, there's a lot more levity, there's a lot more brevity about all of those projects. Yeah, they're as far away removed in terms of tone and direction away from the Zack Snyder movement. Okay, so at the time, Warner Brothers and DC, they wanted nothing more to do with the Zack Snyder version, right? This is a case where a certain scenario or certain situations have dictated that they want to release the Snyder Cut version, okay? This is more of them wanting to promote the HBO Max service, okay? If there was no HBO Max streaming channel, then we would not be getting the Snyder Cut. Regardless of how many millions of people went online and how many crowdfunding initiatives or donations they made to charity, how many tweets they made online, YouTube videos, articles, podcasts, they could make 1 million of those. If there was no HBO streaming Max channel, then you would not be seeing the Snyder Cut. It's pure and simple. That's fact. They are using the Snyder Cut as a way to propel their streaming service, which I think has debuted now. Okay, so it gets a lot of focus and attention, and hopefully it can get them more potential subscribers. Okay, so from a business point of view and a marketing point of view, of course that makes sense. Okay, they're using the online movement to promote their services, but that very much goes against the kind of ethic, the kind of ideal of people being passionate about a project and seeing that project realized, right? Because in an ideal world, it wouldn't need a streaming app to see the extended version of the Snyder Cut. In an ideal world, we would have seen the Snyder Cut released a lot sooner. You know, people would have gone online shortly after the release of the Justice League when they found out the issues going on with the production, and they knew that Zack Snyder's version hadn't been complete. So we would have seen an release of the Snyder Cut maybe 5 or 6 months after the release of Justice League, and more importantly, we would have seen the Snyder Cut be released in theaters, right, rather than a streaming app, so people could get the full cinematic fit experience of the Snyder Cut within this, within the theaters. And as we've heard, various rumors are like that this Snyder Cut, when it's released, it's not even going to be the full kind of 4 hour version that Zack Snyder originally envisioned. It's going to be potentially chopped up into 6 installments of around about 30-40 minutes. So you're not going to get that full epic continuous version. I'm sure later on it will be released, maybe eventually on Blu-ray, or people will put fan edits together, and of course you can binge watch it when they release episodes eventually. I think they'll go for a weekly kind of release schedule, but you could just wait till all 6 episodes go online and just watch it all in one bulk load. Okay, but if the Snyder Cut was really this project that the Warner Brothers really cared about, it would have been released a long time ago. Okay, they're only releasing it because they see it as potential subscribers to be attained for their streaming service. This is a cash grab. This is a money making exercise. Okay, and for me that kind of undermines what the Snyder Cut is symbolizing, what people feel that a Snyder Cut is standing for. Certain situations has determined the release of the Snyder Cut, and we also have to look at the fact that we are in this pandemic and we're stuck in, and the entertainment and movie industry has really come to a standstill, right? Now just imagine if there was no pandemic. Okay, right? All the hype, all the buzz, all the attention that goes on with the movie industry would be taken up by other event movies. Black Widow, Fast and Furious 9, Wonder Woman 1984, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, the live action version of Mulan, okay, the James Bond movie No Time to Die. All of these projects would have taken away a lot of the hype and the buzz and the attention away from the release of Snyder Cut movement. Okay, that probably would have got really hidden away or lost in the kind of hype and the buzz that each of these big event movies would have taken, because we'd be talking more about their own box office, how well they did, and any kind of critical reception or potential sequels involved with those big event movies. So the Snyder Cut, I think, would have got forgotten about in the haze of the industry, the movie industry taking on as normal with all these big event movies. Okay, the fact that we're stuck in and there's no real big movies to talk about. Okay, there's television series and there's Netflix stuff going on, but in terms of big event movies, there's not really a lot to talk about. So really, that's helped the Snyder Cut movement in many ways, because it's the #1 subject that's trending. Whereas if the movie industry was going on as normal, then it may not even have been the #20 subject trending. If we look at the comic book movies, let's say if Wonder Woman 1984 was a massive success, and if we look at the kind of rumored leaks and speculation, there's going to be some sort of development when there's going to be some sort of time altering element involved, and it's going to completely reboot or reset the cinematic universe, we'd get more excited than that rather than a Snyder Cut. If we go forward to Matt Reeves' Batman, okay, if that proves to be a major success and that's some sort of end credit scenes going on that hints at another future, and there's rumours that it's going to take place in the 90s, okay, then we'd be getting more excited about that rather than a Snyder Cut. We'd be completely forgetting about it. We'd be moving on to the next kind of continuity within Batman and the DC heroes. So the Snyder Cut would get forgotten about. Do you see what I'm saying? So we kind of just need to gauge a bit of just perspective before we start celebrating that this is a major win and a major victory. Now, I think it is, but we just have to determine that there have been certain parameters that have decided the fact that the Snyder Cut has come to full realization. Okay, and so I just think in general, when we look at the Snyder Cut and the Snyder Cut movement, that yes, it has been a victory for fans who wanted to see the project, and yes, it does bring focus and attention to the fact that fans can have a voice and speak online. But what we just have to remember in terms of the Snyder Cut, that the primary reason that it has come to fruition is not because the fans have had a major say and a major movement. It is primarily because it is a money making opportunity to bolster subscriptions from a streaming service. And that's the kind of real victory. If you want to determine who's had the best victory, it's Warner Brothers and AT&T, because through online movement with the release of Snyder Cut, they've had free advertising and free press and free scrutiny and free attention in order for them to gain potential millions of subscribers for their streaming app. And I think that's the real victory. So there are elements of the victory for the fans, but I think the real victory is for the companies involved who want to make more money. And that's what I determine within the Snyder Cut movement, is that it's been a very highly controversial subject, but it's been a victory much more for Warner Brothers and AT&T in terms of potentially making more money. So those are my overall thoughts on the Snyder Cut in terms of the perception and the fan movement. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I know it's another very lengthy video. I will try to be more concise in the future. But let me know what you think about the Snyder Cut in terms of fans' perception in general. Do you think it is more the fans' victory, or do you think, like me, this is just a case of the fans being more exploited for a cash grab and a money-making exercise for Warner Brothers and AT&T? But those are my thoughts for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.